I stopped drinking back in January 2013, and I had so many motivations to stop drinking. I mean, a lot of these motivations have been built up over many years. All the shit times that you have on a drug. When you're drunk, the embarrassing moments, all the shit that's happened to your body physically, the damage to your mental health, the damage to your life. It's easy to look back once you have a bit of distance from your old life and to say to yourself, well, all those years that I wasted, all that fucking time that I wasted, the money that I wasted, the opportunities that I wasted, because instead of going out and doing the things that I wanted to do, I was sat on a couch chugging back beers or chugging back wine, or I was in a pub ordering and paying twice, three times as much for what I could have been drinking at home, and wasting my time with people who were on that same wavelength. But it's also the opportunities that you didn't see, that you couldn't see because you were mixed up in, that your brain was mixed up in this idea of putting a toxin into your body for fun. Now, the thing that really set off the ball for me, I've been thinking about it for a long time. I've been looking at different forums and trying to find ways to really moderate my drinking and to cut it back, because I didn't really at that stage in 2012 believe that it was me, that it was just the idea that I was drinking too much, and that if I could cut back the amount that I was drinking, then everything would be okay. And it was that Christmas 2013, my son had come over from Ireland, and we were living in Spain at the time, where this is the last week that we're here in Andorra, by the way. This is Andorra. So that's all Andorra over there. That's Spain over there. So we're heading back to Spain next week, permanently. But he came over that Christmas, and one thing led to another, and I just realized that it was one of my biggest regrets in life, that I wasn't being a better father to my son, that I wasn't being the best role model that I could be, because that's what I always wanted from day one. From the moment he was born, I just wanted to be the best, give him the best opportunity in life. And I was failing in that because of that one thing. And the one thing that you do has knock-on effects in everything else that you do. So that was a huge motivation for me. Now, one of the things that really that gave me, I think motivation has to be more about not only what you see and how you process that logically. It has to be an emotional, something that really hits you deep, something that really cuts to the core of your thinking and who you think you are in yourself, to kind of break open that identity, that alcohol drinker's identity that we all have. And that has to be an emotional reaction. And, part of that for me, like I said, there's lots of different things that I can draw on for the culmination of it, right? My son, that Christmas was the straw that broke the camel's back. And one of the things that really kept me motivated after I stopped drinking was this idea of cirrhosis of the liver. And it was, I never really thought about it before, the same thing as I never really thought about being an alcoholic, or I never thought about the damage, the internal damage or the mental damage that these things were doing. And I think it was probably 2 months before I stopped drinking that I was, doing the rounds of the forums and the blogs and reading different things, and I came across this blog called The Immortal Alcoholic, and I'm not sure if she's still going, but it was basically this lady who was caring for her husband, who was an end-stage alcoholic. So he had end-stage cirrhosis of the liver. And she called him an alcoholic. And if you've watched any of my videos, I hate that word, but with some people, I suppose he was the kind of person who was just, he wasn't going to change no matter what happened in his life. There was no way that he was going to change anything that he was doing. So yeah, from that perspective, I'm presuming that you can call somebody like that an alcoholic. But I've read a few of her posts, and they're all from the perspective of she's looking after her husband who is dying of cirrhosis of the liver. And I don't know what her situation is. I don't know. I know he's dead a long time now. I can't remember the guy's name. Not that it matters. But he was dying and she's looking after him. Don't know her situation. I don't know what her financial situation was. I don't know whether she was looking after him because she couldn't afford to get him treatment elsewhere, or whether he had treatment, or, I don't know any of those things. It doesn't matter. The post that really got me was when she described walking into her husband's bedroom. They obviously had separate rooms at this stage, and she said she couldn't go in this day because of the smell that was coming off him, because his liver was no longer functioning properly. It was no longer metabolizing any of not only the alcohol anymore, because he was still drinking, but wasn't metabolizing any toxins. So everything was coming out through his skin. You can read up into this stuff, and once you start digging into this stuff, it's quite scary. It's a frightening thing to happen to somebody. It's a frightening thing to happen to a person who is looking after somebody that I'm presuming previously that they loved. Whether or not they love them still, this is somebody that they're caring for. And you can't go into that room because of the stink that is coming off this person. And this is on top of everything else that is obviously happening to them. The yellowing of the skin, the sallow complexion, seeing the person that, as I said, you love deteriorating in front of you. Now, I don't know this fella from Adam. I don't know this woman from Adam. But it was a story that I was able to use. I mean, it stayed with me, right, for the couple of months or whatever it was until I actually stopped drinking alcohol. And I'm presuming that it was there in my subconscious, but it came back to me after I'd stopped. And it was one of the motivations that I used to stay stopped, was to think of myself. I always think that there's a good method of keeping yourself on the right track is to look at the alternative. So you've stopped drinking and you're trying to push towards whatever it is that you're trying to get towards in your life, and the potential that you've opened up now that you've stopped drinking. But you can also, in your imagination, go down the road of where would I be if I hadn't stopped. It's easy for me to do now, kind of heading up to 14 years without a drink, since I stopped drinking. But I know that I wouldn't be here, especially not in this form. I definitely wouldn't be in Andorra. I wouldn't have experienced any of this. I wouldn't be walking in these mountains. I probably wouldn't be here physically, right? Let's face it, if I hadn't have stopped drinking alcohol, because it was just killing me. I was in a terrible state when I was drinking, and I didn't know it. I knew some of it, but not the extent. It's only when you get to the other side of it that you really start to understand what the fuck you were doing to yourself, what you were missing out on all these years. But so I did this 2-track thing where, one track I was looking at myself and, right, this is the road I'm on, this is what I can possibly do now that I've stopped drinking alcohol. But this is the warning shot across my own bows, that if I go back to alcohol, if I go back to that old life, if I think that that's a good idea, then I would picture myself in that position, in a bed, in a room, stinking the room up. And instead of, Esther, my partner, walking in, it was my son. And he always had a mixture of disgust on his face because of the smell and because of the withering and the yellowing and the me being the shadow of my former self, all that kind of stuff. But also pity And yeah, I never wanted that, like I said, the reason I stopped in the first place, the straw that broke the camel's back for me was to be the best dad that I could be, or to be a better dad, to put myself on that journey and to deliberately, that was my aim. So every decision that I made from now on was going to be with that in mind, or at least that as a subplot of everything else that I did. That would inform whether or not it was a good decision for me, and that's really helped me over the years. But to see myself and to put myself into that position, and to see my son looking at me like that, and to really picture him, that used to really get me, it would bring me to tears. And it still does, when I think about it, that I could have been there had I not made that one decision to stop. And, it is a tough thing to do. It's a tough decision to make. I remember listening to the world's strongest man. He was, when he was doing the, I think it was 500 kilos he was lifting, Eddie Hall. And he said he had to go through some dark places in his own mind in order for him to get the strength to do that. And I know some of the things that he was thinking, or I can imagine. I remember listening to him in a podcast, and I can't find the podcast, but he was talking about imagining certain scenarios with his own children, which would be, for him, give him superhuman strength. And I've heard people saying, well, it was lifting a car off one of your children that got knocked out. I don't think it was that. I think it was a lot more darker than that he was going in. But it was something that he was using his own imagination for, his own emotions for, so he's using the pictures in his mind to drive the emotions in his body in order to lift those weights. And I just thought it's the power of your own mind. It's how you see things. So yeah, that's my thing for today. And it is for you to try and find things in your own life that are not, we can all find the logical reasons for stopping. That's not the problem. The problem is finding the emotions. There's something which is so, the idea of putting yourself into that position where you're stinking the room up and you just, you've no chance and no hope anymore. It's the end game and you're just waiting to die. That's bad enough. But to see it from somebody else's perspective, the immortal alcoholic, the whole idea behind that blog was she wanted people to see it from the perspective of a person who is having to deal with this on a day-to-day basis, who is waiting for somebody that they love to die. From the perspective of not only for their misery to end, but for the person who is looking after them for that to be over and done with and to move on. So, and that, if you can apply those things to yourself and to see people that you care about in those positions, it's a great way of looking at your future, to look at those two paths, to look at a path where you're opening up all these possibilities for yourself, but also to open up the path where this is where you're going to end up if you don't fucking stop doing what you're doing, and you can use this for anything in your life. It's not just for alcohol. I've used this for so many different areas, in different scenarios, not this particular one, but for choosing the food that I'm eating, exercising, getting out into the mountains like this, and just choosing different areas of my life that I want to improve, the things that make me happy, and doing more of those things in my life, and using emotions to guide those. And it's a really good exercise. It's something that you can do. It doesn't cost you anything. You can take it anywhere. You can do it at any time. So anyway, I'll leave it there for today. If you want some coaching from me, if you want me to help you to stop drinking alcohol, I don't do a lot about stopping drinking. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we do is all about helping you to cope with the first couple of months and get through that, to get to that next stage. And for me, it's all about staying stopped, but not staying stopped like you're focusing on alcohol, but you're focusing on trying to get to the best possible version of yourself, whatever that may be. for you. And yeah, that's our goal. That's always been my goal. You know, people say, well, how can you talk about alcohol all the time? I don't. I talk about people getting better. I talk about people pushing themselves to their purpose in life, you know, forgetting about what's happened in the past, because none of that fucking matters. You know, you can use these things as tools in order to progress, to help you progress in your own life. But there's no point in dwelling on these things like it's something that's going to... Dwelling on them is not going to help you. It's only dwelling on them with the idea of how can I learn from it and not repeat those mistakes, or, you know, as I've said there, to use certain visualization techniques, or use your past to not repeat, you know, learn from your own fucking history. So anyway, take care of yourself, and I'll speak to you in the next one. Onwards and upwards, eh? Bye now.